All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Legacy and Libations Show. My name is Bill Soroka. I'm the author of Sign and Thrive, How to Make Six Figures as a Mobile Notary and Loan Signing Agent. And I'm passionate about helping you get your affairs in order before it's too late. My co-host of the show is Mr. John Braddock, founder of My Life and Wishes. And let me stop that participant share, Denise. Thank you, but we got it. John, come on up and introduce yourself, and then I'll let you introduce our special guest.
That sounds great. Hi, everybody. As I think most of you know, I'm John Braddock, the founder of mylifeandwishes.com and the author of Click Here When I Die, making things easier for those you love, because isn't that what it's really all about? Very happy to see people coming in tonight. We are joined tonight by a very special guest, a good friend. Bill knows her quite well. Brian Green knows her quite well. And it's Stephanie Maloney. And Stephanie has been in and around the planning business for, and you told me
Careful,
this, so
John. Careful, John.
30 years, but which means you started around 10, or a little
infancy,
younger.
Right? Infancy.
Right. Stephanie's office is in Carefree and in Surprise, Arizona, down here. She enjoys building client relationships and maintaining them. It's never her goal to complete a job or a project for a client and say, hey, you're on your own. Okay. She expects that when the clients need assistance on an existing issue or something new arises, that they never hesitate to reach back out to her. She wants to help her clients and associates, in working through their challenges that they currently face. No need to do it alone when you have a team. And in addition to Premier Estate Planning, she's also a very important part of the Wealth Store. So let me introduce Stephanie Maloney.
Thank you so much, John and Bill, for having me on today. And everything you said about me is accurate. 30 years, been around this business, probably a little bit longer. And we serve the public doing estate planning and financial services. And my focus is primarily the estate planning side of our practice. My husband and partner, Mike Maloney, works with me as well. And the other side's really where he spends his time. I focus on helping our personal clients with their estate planning needs, as well as agents and advisors, notaries all over the country, helping them to bring this into their existing practice so they can serve their families using these same tools. Because all of us are dealing with people every day with what we do. And the really nice thing about estate planning is that everyone you talk to needs it. So when it comes to prospecting with anything that we're all doing, that's often, you could have the best restaurant in town, but we have to wait for people to come through our doors and enjoy our amazing food and go, oh, wow, that was amazing. We get to go out and share our message with people. And, if you go into a room and you say you're an estate planner or you're a notary or you do insurance, they don't want to talk to us about most of what we do. But when you say something to the effect of, hey, you lost the ability to manage your affairs due to an accident or a major health event, something that my team and I do is help people get the proper legal documents in place to make sure you have the people you want in charge of your affairs. That's estate planning.
Yes. That's so well said. People procrastinate. We all know, you can look at all the statistics, less than 50% of people have a will or an estate plan out there. And it's like, wow, are those 50% just never going to die or become incapacitated? Because I'd like to sign up for that one, right?
Yeah.
And so I know you had mentioned, a lot of people are, floating down that river of denial.
Yeah.
When it comes to getting things done. And so it's just so important. I'd like to start with a question. You can help elaborate on it. We're, Arizona is kind of unique because we have professionals like yourself that are professional and certified document preparers. So you're not an estate planning attorney, so you don't have to mess with a state bar and all that.
No.
But can you explain to us what is the difference between if I see you or if I went to a estate planning attorney?
Okay, so as you said, the program that I operate under is unique to Arizona. There are several other states that have document preparer licensure. California is one of them, and they all have a little bit different latitude as to what they're allowed to do. Arizona has a pretty broad pen that you can do lots of things for families with your Arizona certified legal document license. I focus strictly on the estate planning because that's where I have mentorship and guidance. As I said earlier, we've been in practice for almost 40 years, and my mentor is my father-in-law. We came to Arizona from the Midwest. And when we arrived in Arizona, they didn't have this program. It didn't come along until 2003. So we operated much like we had when we were in Iowa. We hired an attorney, they prepared our documents, and we served the public in that capacity. We still didn't really truly operate like a law firm. We were producing documents. So when the program came along in Arizona, we just liked operating under that flag. It's less threatening, I think, to the general public. Who wants to have an attorney? Who wants to have to go do that? So that's one definitely a roadblock for people. I think they go, oh, that's going to be so expensive. I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm not going to. But a big difference and a distinction between myself and what I'm allowed to do versus an estate planning attorney. I can't provide advice. I can't try to lead you down a path. I provide education, hopefully to the point that it makes it so clear and obvious, you know, what the result of your path will be, because that's the important part. Many people, there's so much misinformation and just misunderstanding of estate planning. And heck, let's be real. Most people don't think they need it because of the term estate planning. Makes it sound like we need to live in a castle and have lots of people working for us and have all of this wealth and be older. And that's really couldn't be further from the truth. Of course, those people also need planning, but the one thing that we all have in common with those super wealthy people is we don't want to do this, and neither do they. And that's why we hear about famous people passing away without paperwork. You're going, my goodness, they had to have tons of attorneys around them. Why don't they have this stuff done? Because they're just like everyone else. We think we've got another week, another year, or we just don't think we need it, or we don't care. And that's not where most of us really live. We do care.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, Prince, Aretha Franklin, you know, listen, Twitch is the latest guy who took his own life and no will, and now, you know, the time his wife gets all that through probate and settles all the affairs and does things, and in that case, because he had a lot of money, that's going to be years. But even people that aren't super wealthy, probate can take, you know, 18 months. And, you know, people tend to have that, well, you know, estate, that's for, you know, rich people and the wealthy. And, you know, I like to dumb things down because it's easier for me. And I tell people estate is just a fancy word for stuff. And we all have stuff. And you want who you want to get that stuff to get it, not have to deal with fighting and letting the state decide.
Right. And you know, that time frame that you gave, John, that's if things go nicely. You know, it's funny. I was wondering who, somebody said a famous rapper died, and I didn't know who they were talking about. So obviously that's who that is. You know, does he have another family out there? Did he have previous children? Like, you know, so something like that could be ongoing. And because there are minor children, it's very likely will be going on until all of those kids reach 18.
Exactly.
So I don't know how many children he has, but we can imagine there could be some people coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up too, because it's so hard to imagine people with that much at stake. And they were like, you picture it. We work so hard to build this stuff up. I mean, whether it's fame or fortune or notoriety or impact, whatever it is that you're working to build in this life, this legacy that you want to leave behind, and then we don't do the final step to take care of it. And I'm guilty of this. This is one thing. I mean, Stephanie is my person for my estate plan, and I've been dragging my feet even after a major medical event on this. It's just a weird psychological thing, but every day I'm thinking.
And I appreciate your candor too, because like I tell people the same thing, Bill. We didn't get our planning in place till 5 years after my first child was born. Hello.
And you do this.
I know. And my husband, at the time, though, I wasn't as entrenched on this side. I was my husband's financial practice manager. So I was more over there, and I would say to Mike, hey, we should get our documents done, right? Yeah. You know, and then we'd be the one going on our first kidless trip. And here I am writing down on a piece of notebook paper what's supposed to happen in case we don't come back to that nice big insurance policy that both of us have. It would have gotten to our boys, but certainly not how we would have wanted it to happen.
Right.
You know, so.
Well, and I'm certainly grateful that Bill is a client of yours, Stephanie, that you're working with him on his estate plan, because if it wasn't for him working with you, I wouldn't even know Bill. Like, who is this? Who is this notary guru out there in the world?
And I know why he doesn't have enough time to get his own stuff done, because he's too busy having fun doing all of these great things that he does. And what do we all do? Like the weekend comes and we're like, oh, now we have to do this. Oh yeah. Ooh, yeah. And I get it, but it feels so awesome once it's done.
Yeah.
it does.
I'm not even all the way done yet. I just did the first preview of everything, the next preview of everything, and I feel relieved, even though I haven't fully signed it yet. So
but you're close. You're very close.
So close to that feeling. But
Yeah.
that kind of brings me to the other question. We were kind of joking about it before we came on. But one of the things that stood out in your conversation, Stephanie, because I've sat with many estate planning attorneys, and it's kind of focused on death. If you die, this happens, this person gets that. But you flipped the conversation and you started talking about incapacitation first.
Yeah.
And I hadn't even thought of incapacitation. I had never even thought about what that might look like and who's going to make those decisions. So maybe you can talk about why you're so passionate and why that's front and center in your presentation.
Absolutely. It's so, and that is why we do it, to get people's attention, because when people, I would say, 90% of people at least, unless they've dealt with somebody becoming sick and incapacitated, we all kill ourselves off in our stories in our head when we start thinking about this. And estate planning is just about, where's my stuff going to go when I'm gone? And of course, the younger we are, that's a long time from now. So what am I in a hurry for? So we always start off our education talking about, okay, yes, we're going to address the distribution documents and where our things are going to go at the end of the day. But the first thing we have to address is, what if we're here, but we can't manage our lives? And the way I like to think about estate planning documents, and not everybody needs a full estate plan. Some people start with a couple documents, and then as life gets a little more complicated, we're adding documents. But everybody over 18 needs certain documents in place to allow someone they love and trust to make decisions for them. And I don't know about anybody on this call, but not too many 18-year-olds that I've ever met would I consider a true adult, but the government does. So HIPAA kicks in once we turn 18, and we need our permission slip. That's why I like to call estate planning documents permission slips, because that's what we're doing. We're giving someone we trust permission to now step into our financial shoes and take care of all of our financial obligations. And of course, we're giving permission to someone to also make medical decisions for us. Another way to think about these documents, they're liability relieving slips for the doctors and nurses that we're going to engage with, and all of the financial firms that have our money. So very important to make sure, and this is an important thing, it doesn't matter if you have a dime. everybody on this call, every adult you know needs financial and medical powers of attorney in order to allow their spouse, their parent for a child, the child for the parent to make decisions. And I was sharing with them before we got on the call, because of what's unfolded over the last several years, I would definitely say it's brought the attention to the table a little bit more for the younger person, the single person. And I've had a lot of single male clients, and they'll say, well, I'm going to be dead. I don't even care. They're kind of joking, but not really, because they're like, I'm not going to be here. So what does it matter? And I'll say, well, if you don't have your healthcare permission slip in place, you might be around a lot longer than you want to, because someone has to have permission to take you off of life support. A doctor and a hospital want to save you. They want to try to preserve your life, regardless sometimes of the state of it. Their job is to keep you here. So you've got to have that permission slip in place to make sure somebody that you trust is going to be capable and has the permission slip to make that hard decision. We certainly don't want to make it harder by having to now have them go through a court process to get permission to do this horrible job that they're having to do, possibly taking your life. And I know they're not taking your life, but that's what they feel like they're doing, certainly.
That's so important, as you and I have discussed in the past, with all the kids that we have, if I don't have a plan in place that says, take me off life support, do this, do that. I mean, we all know families can't agree. I mean, can't agree on what movie to see, what we're having for dinner. I can't imagine if I'm on life support and I don't have documents in place. I know that a couple of my sons would be very practical about it and say, if there's no chance and, no brain activity and on, let's pull the plug. And I know at least one of my daughters would be like, but if there is just even the slimmest little chance, don't want to do it. And now you have family fighting, you're going to get the courts involved. The old Terry Schiavo case that I think a lot of people might be familiar with, where she was on life support and the family fought over this for years. But you had mentioned to Bill and I earlier about a scenario where a person was in a coma. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I just had these people in my office yesterday, and we were signing their documents, and we just started talking about the healthcare document. And so the guy started talking about his father and his experience with what his poor father went through. And a lot of times when we're doing the intake and people start talking about their different people they're going to put into these positions, you don't have to have the same monetary decision maker as you do for healthcare. And many times they are different. I would say roughly 95% of our clients pick their children to be their people if relationships are good and they're good people. And so sometimes they might feel one's more monetarily minded, but this one we're going to put on the medical. And in this gentleman's case, his dad chose wrong. He picked the one that lived near him, but he thought, hey, you're here, it makes sense, you should be my person because you're close. The other kids had moved to a distance. And I typically do say that to a client, it's not ideal to not have a person that doesn't live near you, because in Arizona, we have a lot of people that come here and live part-time and then they go home. So their children often aren't here in Arizona. But look at our modern times, look at COVID. They didn't even let people in the hospital. So it didn't even matter if your people were here. They can do just the same thing, get approved to make decisions and then be able to make these calls. But in that instance, that the guy that I was working with said, yep, he picked him because he was there. And at the end of the day, what ended up happening, there were 5 other siblings, including the client that I was serving yesterday. And the brother that was in charge of healthcare decisions decided to keep father here for almost 10 years. And he was in a coma, essentially, couldn't talk to anybody, was being fed. He was being kept alive. And all of the other siblings wanted to let dad go. Of course, mom was already gone, or she would have been the one making those decisions. Right. And, he just so when he and his wife, there was no hesitation for either of them. They knew, that their girls, would all do what they wanted. They really didn't have any concern, but it certainly made him, you know, it just, he saw that and he was like, oh, just brought that memory to his mind. And his dad ended up, I don't know if he actually died naturally or if the person ended up finally going, you know what, it's time. I'm not really sure how it actually ended, but they don't really talk to that brother anymore either. You know, they're just so disappointed that he just let it go. And it wasn't even about the money. Yes, they went through a ton of money taking care of dad over the course of these 10 years. It was about the fact that they let him be like that. And, you know, dad was a stoic farmer, you know, he was a tough man, but he also wouldn't have wanted to be a burden or a weight on his family. And he wouldn't want to be here able to do nothing for himself.
Right.
So, you know, I just said, he picked wrong. And when things go wrong with all of these documents, that's generally how and why they go wrong, because of the players we put into these positions. So
It's so true. And I find it so interesting when I have these conversations with my friends and family. Everybody says the same thing. Don't keep me alive. I don't want to live in a vegetative state, right? And then when you dig deeper and you find out who knows this and what do they have, what devices do they have in place to ensure that, I've talked to a couple that have their stuff in order, right? But most people, it's just, oh, I told my kids that that's what I want. But can you speak to why just telling somebody isn't enough?
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. A lot of people are also under the false impression that because we are a spouse or because we are a parent to a child or child to a parent, that we just get the automatic nod to be able to make these decisions for each other. And, you know, just like the Terry Schiavo incident, had she put a permission slip in place that said, I want my husband to be making these decisions for me. And I don't remember how old she was, but I feel like they were in their 30s when that
And
started.
they had just gotten married.
Yeah, they were young. And so what 30-year-olds have those documents anyway, right? Very few, except for the families I serve, because I give those to the parents for their adult children if they don't have documents in place. Because if they're single, probably, likely, mom and dad still are their people. You know, mom and dad could have a 45-year-old single child that doesn't have a partner. And so who is their person? Mom or dad, maybe a sibling, but regardless, they have to have in writing who is going to relieve the liability of the hospital, the doctors and nurses for following somebody other than that person laying in the bed's wishes, because now they can't tell us. And it's also important to know this. You can say whatever you want on that document, like, I don't want an organ transplant. I don't want, you know, to be kept here unnecessarily. And as long as you're able to communicate, the doctors are talking to you and listening to you. But when there comes the point in time where you now can't communicate, the opinion and the words coming out of that decision maker's mouth are what they're going to follow. So if they change their mind and said, you know what, I think we should donate these organs, they'll take the organs because you're not making your decisions anymore. So as far as the importance of picking the right person, it's also important to pick the person who's going to, regardless of how they feel, what their values are, that they're going to do what you want. And if it's just, you don't think they're going to, you're probably right.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple of spouses not elect to have their spouse be their medical decision maker for those very examples.
Yeah,
So,
it's so funny, Stephanie, because we're going through this right now, you and I, with my paperwork, and I just sent those changes over to you because I had in place my mom as the decision maker, and I've gotten really clear, as much as I love my mom and she loves me, this is not the decision I want her to make. And I know that she'll be clouded by the emotion of it. And so that was one of the changes I just made. I picked my cousin, who is in the medical arena anyway. She's an RN in a trauma emergency room, and she's very matter of fact, and she can kind of separate the emotion from the situation. And that's what I know, I recognize that I need in that situation. I don't want to have it extended longer than it needs to, just from the emotional, just
right. And you just went through, not just, but a while ago, and you can feel how all of a sudden that happens and you're in that situation and things unfold very quickly.
Yeah.
And it's not like your cousin won't confer with your mom. And we'll discuss like, hey, this
Right.
is what the doctor shared with me. And this is, based on that and based on my experience, I think this is what's going to be best. She's going to approach your mother in a different way than the doctors, your doctors will, because they're in that work mode. She'll have a little bit more empathy for mom, understanding that this is her baby, but here's the truth.
Yeah, exactly. And you need somebody who can make those hard decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. Just
Impossible.
imagine how hard it is, because look how we all struggle just putting our animals down. And I just got told yesterday that my dog has cancer, and I'm going, gonna have to do this again. But we struggle with our animals. And I'm not saying animals aren't important, but they're not people.
Yeah.
And that is a whole other level of difficulty when because you really feel. I had another one last week, and her mom, she is the only lady our only client I've ever had that said, I want everything absolutely done to keep me here. And I met her at a really hurried moment. She was getting ready for this really serious brain surgery. She had these probes in her brain that controlled some kind of nervous things in her heart that kept her from having tremors. And they were poking through her scalp, so they had to go in and redo them. And so she wasn't really too worried, but now this lady's in her I think she's 78. So, obviously everybody that gets to that point in life, it's a little more, we're all a little closer to our death. And then, she's going in for a major surgery, a much bigger deal when you're that age versus 50. And because her daughter was sitting there, and when her mom said that, she was like, she looked at me like, oh, and she's a nurse, the daughter. And, so we go through, mom makes it through the surgery fine. And then she ends up getting sick with an infection 3 weeks later. They end up in the hospital. Mom has 6 strokes. And here, the client that now, the daughter, talking to her yesterday, the doctors just kept saying to her, are you really sure you want us to keep trying? You want us to keep going? And she was so torn, because she's like, God, she said she wanted everything done. She's like, I know logically, I know it doesn't make sense. And they were like telling her, your mom's had 6 strokes in the last 3 days. She's not going to be even herself, her spunky self that she was before. And she knew that in her heart, but she was just tormented. Even in the office yesterday, she was crying. She's like, I went home that night and I just felt like I basically killed my mom.
Yeah.
And she didn't. I mean, her mom I can't even believe her mom was still here, honestly, after that surgery. But I mean, she was like, I want to be here. But I said, I also think your mom said that because of she was right there, right before that surgery going, oh my God, I could be gone in 24 hours. And, it's like, because she said, I would have never imagined my mom saying that when she did this 20 years ago, because she already had some documents in place. And I go, she probably didn't. But now she's here at her end. Like, that's all of us that we're going to say, okay, we're obviously getting close to death. We're in our late 70s, we're in our early 80s. But yeah, it was interesting. And I was like, oh, okay. And she tried, but the doctors and nurses were also very gracious and understanding that what she was trying to do for her mom, but also being pragmatic and going, look, we're just telling you. And they didn't have to tell her. She knew, she's a nurse.
Yeah.
But it was really hard for her. And it's going to be hard for all of us if we have to make those decisions. So having your permission slip in place, it says it's me, not the 4 of you siblings. We're all going to talk about it, but at the end of the day, the doctors and the nurses they're going to listen to me. And that's where, just think about it, everybody that's on the call. Doctors don't even want to stop at a roadside accident. They go to school, they learn, they get trained for this, and now they don't want to learn and use their education because they're too concerned they're going to be sued for trying to do what they've been trained to do. So litigation, it's in the forefront of all of their minds all the time. And that's why when your 18-year-old has a drug overdose, they get in a car accident, and now they're incapacitated, and you're just assuming you get to make that call, they cannot let you. So you end up in a court process to get a permission slip in place after the house is on fire. And you can imagine that's far more costly than doing it preemptively.
That's a great point. Perfect segue, Stephanie, too. So is there, and guys on the call, we're going to open it up to FAQs here in just a moment. So get those hand raising buttons ready if you've got some questions. But Stephanie, is there, I think when people think about estate planning, they automatically assume it has to be a full living trust. You've got to do all of this paperwork. Is there more concise version that just handles these medical or incapacitation?
Yes, absolutely, Bill. So as I said earlier, every adult over 18 needs financial and medical powers of attorney. Those are our overriding permission slip for all of our financial assets. And then of course, our medical decision making. And then when we get into life and now we're starting to acquire assets, we get into new relationships, you're going to need to beef up your paperwork through life. But I will tell you, because I know we're getting close on time, and I'd love to come back and talk a little more detail about this. But another big misinformation that goes around is that a revocable trust is also just for wealthy people. Once someone has a child, they need a trust. Because when we leave assets to minor beneficiaries through the use of a document called a last will and testament, the assets that we leave for our child are going to end up in guardianship and conservatorship to be used by the guardian that gets nominated. And when these children get to the age of 18, they're going to get their share of that inheritance. And that's when we hear of young adults coming into a lot of money. People are like, how the heck did that happen? Who did that? Somebody who just didn't plan. It happened to a friend of ours about 8 years ago, and he didn't have a lot of money, but his family literally just got out of probate, and he's been dead for 8 years because his last child just turned 18. And I'm pretty confident to say there was probably nothing left because fees are ongoing as well the whole time. So education is so powerful in this space because, again, people just think trusts are for rich people. So it's really just about controlling what we do have, be it ourselves, you know, our healthcare decisions and our little bank account when we're in high school and just getting started, or even when we're 99 years old. A lot of my clients get down to basically no money. They have their bank account and maybe their house, maybe not even a house. So it's just important to have at least powers of attorney in place. And then as you go through life, reviewing and making sure you need other things, then you get into them.
Stephanie, do services like your company, Premier Estate Planning, do you provide services to assist with that portion of it, or is it more a full service? What?
Oh no, we do, you know, with pretty much anyone that's introduced to us, we're going to have a conversation much like this. We spend some time and we learn about the client, because sometimes people bring people to me and they think their client might need a full estate plan, and then after a little discovery, they really don't need that robust of a plan, and they can do with certain documents. So we serve the client whatever they need.
Awesome. Great to know. And just, I put it in the chat too, but just so you know, everyone on the call, you're watching the replay, Stephanie has very generously given her time. You can schedule a one-on-one consultation with her to discuss your own personal situation if you'd like to. I'll put that in the chat again. And then also, if you'd like to ask more general questions or even particular questions you don't mind other people hearing, we'll open this up for questions in just a moment. John, I want to turn it over to you. I've hijacked Stephanie and was asking her all the questions. Please.
Oh, no. So Stephanie's great. I'm just telling you, I mean, if anyone has questions, those kind of things, reach out to her, schedule time. I mean, she's not like this scary attorney like my estate planning attorney guy is. She's great. Her husband is wonderful. They got great kids, beautiful dogs, and just really amazing. One thing I wanted to mention, you were talking about organ donation and things like that. So I saw something the other day, and I may not get this totally correct, but apparently an individual been in an accident and they had tattooed on their body that they wanted to donate, like, you know, these various organs. And the family, they were like upset. Well, there was a family fight because some of them were saying that he's got the tattoo, that's what it said. His driver's license indicated the opposite, and his other paperwork. And so the hospital's in this real like dilemma. And one of the family members actually came out and said, you know, he actually got that tattoo when he was drunk, and it was on a dare that he had that. So moral of the story is, don't tattoo your wishes on your body because it may be a legal challenge.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, that was the part.
There's always
Oh,
somebody pushing envelopes.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's nuts.
We've also, I think, got a question or two. I have to scroll back in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
Bill.
Yeah, I see a question from Chris here. So Stephanie, Chris says, kidney transplant patient here. In my own advance directive, I have a maximum of 2 weeks in place before they let me go. Is that something that would hold up in court, or however it ends up being addressed, whoever handles that? Or is there something more that would need to be set up or in place to help make sure he has a maximum of 2 weeks before taking off life support?
So this person's indicating they don't want to be let go before the 2 weeks. They want to see how they're doing. And then if things aren't going well, they want to be. So they're saying they want to be at least kept around for 2 weeks. Is that what they're
I
saying?
think Chris, did you unmute? You want to elaborate?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
hi.
Yeah.
Hi. So I had a kidney transplant in 2021. Actually, it'll be 2 years the end of this month. And so in my advance directive, it does say to keep me alive a maximum of 2 weeks. My wife is the person who would take care of that, along with the team of doctors that I've named as well. And so the question is, obviously, whether or not that would hold up in court, like if there needs to be more documents in addition to that, should somebody challenge that, whether it's a sibling, parent, my child, however that looks.
Chris,
Does that make sense?
yes.
Okay.
Now I understand what you meant. But your wife is your decision maker on your paperwork.
Correct.
Yeah, so yes, that would hold up as long as see, the important part is that she is on board with that decision.
Right.
That's where the stickiness comes in, because the others can argue that they don't agree with that, but they're not your people. So that'd be like me coming into your hospital room and saying, I don't think that's right. We should let him stay here longer. Let's see what we can do. Maybe another kidney will come available in 4 months. So let's keep him around. That would happen if your wife changed her mind and she said, oh, they said we could get a new organ for him in a month. So I think I would like to keep him here. That's where that could become a problem. So as long as your wife is full-heartedly in support of what you want, I think it sounds like it's a very good document. Is there anybody that you feel would try to cause a problem, like a parent of your own or something?
Not necessarily. It's more just if there was somebody. I was hospitalized in 2017 in February. And at that point, I was given 6 weeks, depending on how some medications worked out. Here I am, like 6 years later.
Yeah.
But it was that sort of situation that put that question from the hospital staff, financial side, as well as the social workers and all of that. So they came to my wife and I and said, you've got to fill this out. You got to be honest about it. So we did. And so from then on, as far as I know, nobody has said, oh, but we're going to want this or whatever the question would be. So all that to say, I'm pretty confident nobody would challenge it.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a really good document. And again, it's the players that mess things up. So it sounds like, do you have a backup person for your wife, Chris?
So I was just thinking that, and the answer is no at this point.
That's definitely something I would look at doing if I were you. I want all of my clients to have at least 2 people, like successors for themselves. And I ideally love 3, because it's also something that keeps people from having to come back and abruptly do paperwork because the one person they had suddenly isn't here. And
Right.
you and your wife, if you're anything like my husband and I, we're together a lot, something could happen to both of you, and now she's deceased and you're incapacitated. So who's going to be your person?
It's an excellent point. Yeah, for sure.
So, and obviously it can be really hard to find, not everybody has tons of people to choose from, especially when we start to think about these really important decisions. And then also thinking about not just dying, but being here, and now somebody has to step into my shoes and run my show for an indefinite amount of time. We don't know. So it can be challenging, but I definitely would encourage you to find a person to back your wife up. And of course, hopefully your wife has the same paperwork in place, because while you would expect that it might be you that could have a problem, she could have a problem. And we want to make sure
admittedly, we
you
don't,
have the
yeah.
proper, what?
I said admittedly, we do not for her now.
And that happens a lot because we're focused on the one who's got an issue. And sometimes the person that's caring for the person who's having an issue, you can imagine with dementia and Alzheimer's, some of these really long ongoing illnesses, they can wear out the person who's caretaking. And we've had a lot of clients through the years that the caretaker ended up dying before the sick person because of the stress of the caretaking. And I'm not implying that your wife's having to do that for you, but certainly don't overstep the thought that something could happen to your wife. And if you guys don't have financial power of attorney in place for yourself, so important, because if you became incapacitated, and I don't know if you have other documents or not, your wife can't, one, access anything that's just yours. So for many Americans, we have 401ks and IRAs, and we're the beneficiary when we're married. But now our spouse has a stroke or some medical condition that leaves them incapacitated. I was a stay-at-home mom, I didn't work, and now I need some of this money because the money's not coming in. And somebody says, hey, didn't you have a 401k? And I go to talk to Fidelity about that, and they go, well, Stephanie, you have power of attorney for your husband? And I go, well, I'm the beneficiary. And they go, well, I understand, of course you are, but your husband's not dead, he's incapacitated. And in order for us to allow you to touch his money, you need permission. And we all go, but that's our money, it's our retirement bucket. And at the end of the day, it has his social or your social on it with a beneficiary. So if you don't have financial power of attorney, definitely important. And of course, distribution documents are too, but it's more important to have these documents in place to avoid a problem during an incapacitation. Because let's face it, when somebody dies and they don't have this stuff, well, it's going to be a mess. It's going to take longer. It's going to cost more, but the person's already gone. So we're not in a hurry trying to figure out how can we make decisions for them? How can we pay their bills? That's a sudden thing that's in your lap. Death, well, it's just a process we have to go through and take care of. So very important.
Yeah, great question, Chris. Thanks for bringing that up too. And I just had a conversation with an estate planning attorney who said too, even though it's not legally binding, you can record a video and you can write a letter that just articulates your wishes and why you want it that way, so that if there is an argument later, it might help bridge that gap. So it's just crystal clear what you wanted and why. And then your wife, Chris, who's just honoring your wishes, isn't the bad guy, right?
Yep.
Trying to do that.
And Bill, can you think of somewhere where you should actually store that video and those letters?
Something in my head is remembering, yes, there's a legacy vault by My Life and Wishes. And I love that too.
Shameless plug.
You know, what's funny is I use Chat GPT to try to craft my farewell message on there. And it's naturally not bad, but I think I'm going to have to personalize it a little bit more. But that Chat GPT blows my mind for that.
That's amazing.
We have a couple more great questions. I just saw Patricia's hand come up too. So Patricia, I promise we're going to get to you. I wonder, Stephanie, if you can just touch on a question that we have in the chat that says, what are options if a person doesn't have a beneficiary? Have you ever run into that?
Oh, sure. I have lots of clients that don't have children. So a lot of times, typically, they're going to be charitable. You know, they're going to be charitable. And I know we talked about this a little bit because you have a charitable bequest that you wish to do. And depending on what type of distribution documents ultimately somebody chooses, I usually like to refer to their charitable bequest outside in a document that they can actually modify down the road, because through the years, people's charities change a lot. So the sooner somebody's getting this done, it's like, shoot, I got to go in and update my trust because I don't want it to go to this church anymore. Now I want this. And, you know, that costs money. And I like to try to get my clients to be able to deal with those types of things themselves and be able to change it. So we say the addendum with the most recent date notarized document will be the one to be followed. And when we're settling most of our estates, we're not in courts, we're not with attorneys. So it's being handled by your family and they're following your wishes, hopefully, or whoever your trustee was. So typically when people don't have, you know, the assumptive beneficiary of a spouse or family members, they're going to be charitable.
Great suggestion. Yeah. And since you mentioned notarization, Stephanie, I got a couple private messages here too about because so many people in our audience today happen to be notaries across the country. Do you have any suggestions or advice on how a notary can bring more value to somebody like you in living trust presentations and estate planning
Sure.
documents all the way around?
Yeah. Well, I work with people all over the country, kind of coaching them so they can become conversationally competent in this arena of estate planning. You know, some notaries have a lot more restriction as, you know, the environment they are notarizing in, so they can't really talk about other things they do, but a lot of you probably can. And as I said, after you get familiar with the subject matter and you spend some time with me, really start looking at people differently and wondering, like, do they have their stuff? Do they have their stuff? A lot of us are dealing with, heck, I just got called this weekend myself, and I almost didn't go, but I'm so glad I did. I was in a continuing ed all morning, and then I get a Facebook message, and this lady said, could you come to my home and notarize a document? I know you're a notary, but I don't know if you're a mobile notary. So I asked her what she was wanting to notarize, and she wanted a will notarized because her husband had a surgery on Monday. So I said, oh, this will be a great opportunity for me to learn about these people and see what they understand about wills and trusts and all of that good stuff. And of course, they didn't know squat about anything. And I ended up being there for 2.5 hours. The witnesses that they brought over to notarize the will that this gentleman did, which was a horrible will, by the way, but that's not my job. I just notarized it for him. And quite honestly, this couple shares everything through titling, so it wouldn't have been a problem anyway, but that's another story. So we just had a conversation, but as you guys are all sitting out there with the people that you're serving, you know, somebody calls you because they need a deed notarized, or they have powers of attorney that they're getting notarized. You know, people don't realize that financial power of attorney actually kind of expire, not according to the law, but according to the financial firms that we're going to try to use them at. So when people sit with me and start learning about these things, they just become naturally able to strike up a conversation with the person they're sitting with. It's not what they've got brought in to do, but they can just ask a couple really pointed questions like, hey, you're going to put this on file with Fidelity, right? Like for your IRAs or your 401ks. Well, why do I need to do that? Oh, well, let me tell you a little bit about that. And then you just kind of get into conversations. And then I have a lot of notaries that work with me that end up doing documents. And we can do documents all across the country. So generally how that works is we get on a call just like this. They bring their client to the table and we have an education discussion, and then they follow up with the client. So, and then as time evolves, you get competent in this area pretty quickly. People make estate planning very complicated, but for 99% of us, it's not. It really isn't. We make it more complicated, I think, to give ourselves an excuse not to deal with it because we don't have time.
Yeah.
Right? Or like, oh, I need a whole weekend to work on my estate planning. No, you just need to figure out who your people are.
Yeah.
And then we're going to put them on paper. Like, you know, so not to say that some situations can't be a little more complicated, but in order for me to do documents for a family, of course, I need to have a little understanding of what they're worth monetarily, but not down to a penny. And then we've got to decide who's going to make monetary decisions, who's going to make healthcare decisions. And then, of course, where's your stuff going to go when you're gone? And how do you want that to look? That's really it. And so, I mean, people usually leave my office going, that's it? That's all you need? Yep. And here you've been trying to plan it for 10 years in your mind, even when people are going to do document updates. If you have clients that have existing documents, I can review them. And we can go back to them and offer to do amendments and updated, freshened documents, because people get dust on their documents too. You know, they get them done and they're like, oh, finally, put them on the shelf for 25 years. And then somebody around them has a problem. They go, you know what? We should look at that paperwork we did. You know, and I've had people not even remember who their people were that they named in their documents.
Yeah.
So,
You know, that's
they would
so
figure it out before then.
Yeah, it's so important to review the documents. Any kind of an estate plan, even if it's a will, is not a set it and forget it thing. And I think so many people are scared to call their planner back or whatever because, oh my God, it cost me a couple of $1,000 and it's going to cost me that again. Well, no, it probably won't. The story that anyone who's read my book knows is when we finally found my father-in-law's will after he died. I said to Michelle, I said, hey, honey, I got some good news, bad news. She said, what's the good news? I said, the good news is I found the will. So what's the bad news? I said, the bad news is you have to move to Milwaukee and live with Aunt Jean and Uncle Ed. That's how old that document was. Right.
Hey, good for them though, they did it. Most people don't do that document. They wait until their kids are my age. And now they're doing it for the first time because our average age of client is still around 70 years old.
Wow.
Wow.
Let's
All right.
get to Patricia.
Yeah, Patricia Bridges from Chicago. Welcome, Patricia.
Hello, 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 everybody. Stephanie, you're awesome. You're awesome. I am fortunate that I work with several estate planning attorneys and injury attorneys, and I've gotten to be so knowledgeable, and people think I'm brilliant only because I'm a sponge. But today, John, plug for you. I just gave as a gift one of my clients your book, and I'm going to be the notary for their estate planning with their estate attorney. But I did other work for them, and I overheard them talking about their future plans. And I said, you got to read this book. It's not what you think it is. It's humorous, but it's something that you need to think about and do. And I've done 3 jobs for them because of that shameless plug that I thank you for. I only have 3 more books left, John.
Well,
out of that stack I bought.
We'll have to get you some more, and I appreciate that, and anything that I can do to help,
Well, the
anyone out there.
attorneys loved it. That was my original gift, Stephanie, that I had ordered the books to give as a Christmas thank you gift, for our relationship of working, because I'm usually the notary that's either there with the attorney or I'm there with the client and witnesses, and the attorney is on the phone conducting it. And yeah, I've learned so much and so many different aspects of estate planning. Some people who have their things together and some people that go, and I'm one of those, didn't know that, didn't think about it. But,
do you
know,
can you hear me, Patricia?
Pardon me?
Do you have any idea how much the families that use those attorneys are paying for their documents?
Around $2,500 and up. Am I in the right ballpark?
That's really good for a law firm.
Yeah.
That's how I charge for a married couple. So that's really excellent. There's no attorneys in my area that are charging $2,500 for, I've seen will packages cost that much. So that's really good.
And it's broken down, like you said, into various aspects of how they live. And the review aspect of it, and the importance of just doing it. You can always make updates and changes. And that's how I got this couple, and I was able to gift them with the book. And they said, do you want me to read it and give it back? I said, no, it's a gift.
Share it with someone else, right?
It's a gift. Just remember, I'm the notary, right? Right.
That's awesome.
I think you might need to make a little oh my gosh, what do you call those? The page holders in books. What do you call bookmark?
Bookmark.
Ding ding ding, bookmark. Make a bookmark, Patricia, with your information and include that in every book.
That's a
well, I have leave behinds and things that I give, but when I have given a book, I've already prefaced it. I think, John, that one of my estate planning attorneys has already reached out to you, or you reached out to them.
Yeah.
What was it? Melissa? No. Oh, God. Stokes. Stokes is the name. Stephanie. I can't remember her first name. Don't tell her. But anyway, yes.
It's Megan Stokes.
Megan Stokes. Yes, she's awesome. And we go everywhere doing these estate plannings on lunch in the evening, amendments, the whole thing on the projector screen, the TV. I just think it's exciting. Exciting. I have one last question to ask of you, Stephanie. Have you heard of SKIN, spelled SCIN?
No?
It's, as I understand, it's in relationship to older clients who own property, have value, but they may have to go to a nursing home, assisted living, and this way they can sell to their family member at market value their property, so it doesn't get assumed as, payment. And upon death, the debt is, wiped out.
Is that an Illinois program?
I didn't hear about it in Illinois. I heard about it in reading. So I don't know if it's just Illinois. I would be surprised if it was just Illinois, because we're not typically the leaders in any revolutionary
Well,
type
because
of
you could always-
document.
You can always do that.
Mhm.
But one thing you're doing is you're giving kids a cost basis, creating capital gains issues potentially down the road. Here in Arizona, we have a program called Altex. It's the Arizona Long-Term Care. But of course, they can put liens on your homes and all of that. At the end of the day, there is planning that you can do to avoid that, but it needs to be done well ahead.
Right, that's what I heard.
But I'm going to look into that and learn more about what you're talking about to see if that's something that's a national or if it had to do just with Illinois.
Yeah, please, and let me know, or let Bill and John know, so I know I'll know. But that's a way to protect your assets and sell it legally with paperwork to a family member that they really don't have to pay for it. But it's a way to keep it in the family or give it to somebody as opposed to letting the state assume it.
Yeah.
And thank you very much. And I'm done speaking.
All right, Patricia, thank you so much. That was great, guys. We're coming right up on the hour. So I want to give Stephanie a moment to close us out with any last minute words.
Don't
No
wait.
pressure.
You know what? At the end of the day, like, I encourage you guys, I don't charge for consultations. If you have some of your own questions, if you want to talk, please set a time. I would love to chat with you. If you're interested in an opportunity to perhaps add this to your practice of what you're doing, love to chat with you about that. There's definitely a revenue opportunity for all of you if it's something that you wish to add in. But I promise you, you can become conversationally competent in this arena and serve even more people. All of the people that you've already served. I do some webinars just like this with a couple of notaries where they just meet people and then invite them to a session that we have monthly. So as they're going through their day-to-day, they're, hey, if you're looking for this service, we're going to be doing an education session about it. And of course, it's just like this, low key. We discuss a lot more detail, of course, but it gets them interested, and then you report back to them, and you might have a client to serve in a different capacity. So
Yeah.
just don't put it off any longer, because we don't all get promised tomorrow.
All right. Excellent. I love that. And John, before I close out, do you have any last minute words for us?
I really don't. I just want to shout out to Richard Anderson up in Michigan. He had posted earlier in the chat when we were talking about click here when I die, that he had done a presentation, I guess, for a chamber up there. And that was actually the title of the presentation, which I think is great, because that's why I came up with that name for the book. It makes people go, oh, click here when I die. If they saw that,
it's click here when I become incapacitated.
right.
That's the update.
Exactly. That's going to be the update. We're going to have, maybe you can write the forward to the next book. And
Awesome.
I love that. It doesn't quite roll off the tongue, but I still love it.
Click here when I can't.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
right.
there you go. Yeah. We've got a copywriter in our midst. I love it.
Having a voice when I no longer have one.
Yeah. Oh, man, we could go on for hours with this.
It's,
I'm surrounded by great marketers.
we won't do that to you. We'll wrap up here today, but here's the thing, guys. If you're a mobile notary, I'm committed to helping you. I'm on a mission to help you serve 1,000 more customers, to make this your dream year in this business. And the part of the way we do that is we bring conversations like this to the forefront. We introduce you to people like Stephanie, who are clearly open-minded and committed to not only their own craft, but helping there be a win-win for you as well. So if you're not reading between the lines, I'm taking it out of between the lines. There's an opportunity here. If you're interested, grab it. Get in that orbit with Stephanie. Get your own stuff together. Get your own paperwork together. Get conversationally competent about this topic, because it's going to relate to your entire business forever. And you've got an ally in me, John, and Stephanie on this call. And almost every other guest we've had has kind of hinted around this as well, too. They're here. They're willing to play ball. Who has courage to volley it over? Thank you so much for being here, Stephanie. Thank you for carving time out of your day to be here with us. John, as usual, thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Take care.